Welcome to the Innovation Perspective. If you're a founder or maybe just really fascinated by the cutting edge of business, well, you're definitely in the right place. We're diving deep into what drives innovation, looking at visionary entrepreneurs and exploring those groundbreaking strategies that are, really shaping how we all do business.
And today's mission, I think, is a really critical one. We want to equip you, the listener, with actionable insights for navigating and really thriving in today's, well, let's face it, fast-paced business environment.
Absolutely.
We've spent time sifting through a whole range of expert sources to bring you the key elements of adaptability, resilience, and importantly, spotting those crucial opportunities that can propel your venture forward.
Exactly. Think of this as maybe your shortcut to understanding what it really takes, not just to keep up, but actually get ahead.
Right.
We're focusing on three core areas today. First, we'll look at navigating constant change. That means adaptability, resilience, and even your own personal well-being as an entrepreneur, which is huge.
So important.
Second, we'll tackle responding to those big external shifts. Things like, presidential transitions, policy uncertainty, even preparing for potential disruptions like disasters.
And finally, the part I always find exciting, how to actively seize opportunities. So we're talking smart market analysis, fostering innovation, getting funding, and solid strategic planning.
Great. So let's dive right into that first area then. Navigating this world that seems constantly in flux. It really can feel like the ground is always shifting.
It really can.
So why are adaptability and resilience just so critical for entrepreneurs right now?
Well, you've kind of nailed it. The pace of technological change, globalization, connecting everything, and these unforeseen events just popping up more often. It means that being able to adjust and bounce back isn't just like a nice bonus anymore.
Right, it's table stakes.
Exactly. It's fundamental, a requirement just to stay in the game. It's not enough to launch with a brilliant idea. It's about that sustained ability to evolve, to respond effectively over time.
Okay, so what does business adaptability actually look like, on the ground?
Yeah, good question. At its core, it's about an organization's capacity to quickly and effectively adjust its operations, its strategies, when things change.
Market shifts, new trends.
Exactly. Economic bumps, competitive pressures, any significant challenge, really. And given how often these things seem to pop up now, that kind of agility is less of a luxury and more of a basic necessity for, well, survival.
And entrepreneurial resilience. It feels like it's more than just, getting back up after being knocked down. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. Resilience is about recovering from setbacks. And let's be honest, setbacks are inevitable for entrepreneurs.
Oh, yeah.
But the crucial part is the learning lens. It's seeing those tough times not as failures, but as opportunities, chances to learn, to grow stronger.
So it's a mindset thing, too.
It is, but it's also about action. It's that persistent drive to navigate obstacles, stay positive, find creative solutions, and just keep moving forward, even when things get really, really tough.
What I find fascinating is your point that these aren't just like personality traits someone's born with.
No, not at all. They are capabilities you actively build into the fabric of your business. I mean, history is littered with examples of once dominant companies that just failed to adapt. They didn't adjust to new tech or market shifts.
And they disappeared.
Pretty much. So agility isn't just about weathering storms, though it definitely helps with that. It's also about being ready, poised, to jump on new opportunities that often emerge because of change.
Okay.
And there's even solid empirical evidence linking that entrepreneurial resilience directly to business success, especially during crises.
So, okay, these are operational muscles we need to build. How do we actually, cultivate them?
Exactly. Adaptability and resilience, they need to be woven into your strategy, your culture. It can't be an afterthought.
So practically, what does that look like?
Well, for adaptability, it means having systems, processes in place that allow you to adjust operations quickly. Think agile strategy execution, for example. And for resilience, having robust risk mitigation strategies, solid business continuity plans. These are concrete ways to build that resilience right into your organization's structure.
It sounds like it requires real investment.
It absolutely does. You have to consciously invest in those systems, refine your processes, and critically make sure your team has the training and the mindset to be both adaptable and resilient. You can't just, cross your fingers and hope for the best.
That's a great way to put it, building the muscle.
Yeah.
Now, another piece you mentioned, foundational really, is mindset, specifically cultivating a growth mindset. Why is that so important here?
A growth mindset is, well, it's absolutely key for both resilience and adaptability. It's fundamentally about shifting your perspective.
How so?
It's about seeing challenges not as like brick walls or dead ends, but as valuable opportunities.
Mhm.
Opportunities for learning, for innovation, for growth. It's approaching problems with curiosity and a real solution-oriented attitude.
Because the entrepreneurial journey is never a straight line, is it? There are always going to be bumps, setbacks.
Precisely. Failure, or at least encountering significant hurdles, is almost guaranteed at some point. A growth mindset allows entrepreneurs to reframe those failures.
Not as defeat.
Exactly. Not as signs of defeat, but as crucial learning experiences. They provide incredibly valuable insights for the future. There's that great advice to really study your failures. Dig into what went wrong, why it went wrong, and extract those key lessons. That's a very practical application of this mindset.
And it fuels creativity too, right? The constant curiosity you mentioned.
Absolutely. Lifelong learning and that sort of inherent curiosity are hallmarks of a growth mindset. Entrepreneurs who are always seeking out new experiences, different ideas, questioning the status quo, they're just much better positioned to fuel creativity and drive innovation.
How can people actively cultivate that?
Well, this continuous learning can be very practical. Things like reflective journaling, where you actually take time to note down your experiences and what you learned, and actively seeking feedback from mentors, peers, even customers, always looking for the lesson in every setback.
So it's not just about thinking positively. It's an active, ongoing process.
Exactly right. Developing a growth mindset isn't a one-time fix, it's an ongoing journey. It involves actively embracing challenges when they come up, consciously trying to foster creativity in yourself and your team, committing to lifelong learning, and regularly practicing self-reflection.
Are there structured ways to do that?
Definitely. Like asking yourself specific probing questions when analyzing a failure, or using that journaling technique for deeper reflection. It's a continuous cycle. Face challenge, reflect, learn, apply, repeat.
Okay, this is all vital for the business itself. But what about the person running it all? We hear so much about the personal toll of entrepreneurship. What are some of the key personal challenges founders face?
Yeah, the personal side is critical. The entrepreneurial path, while it can be incredibly rewarding, is undeniably filled with personal challenges. You got the long hours, the intense pressure, constant decision-making fatigue, financial uncertainty. It all adds up to significant stress.
Which can really take a toll if it's not managed.
Exactly. If it's not managed effectively, it can lead to serious issues.
Like burnout. We hear that term a lot. What exactly is it, and how common is it?
So burnout is technically a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion. It comes from prolonged excessive stress. And unfortunately, it's alarmingly common among entrepreneurs. Some studies suggest nearly half, maybe even more, report experiencing it at some point.
Wow, nearly 50%. That's huge. And it's not just burnout, is it? There are other struggles too.
Absolutely. Work-life imbalance is a major one. The demands of building a business often just bleed into personal time, affecting relationships. Then there's the potential for isolation, loneliness. Even if you have a team, the ultimate responsibility often feels very solitary.
Yeah, I can see that.
And finally, there are those internal struggles, the fear of failure, nagging self-doubt, maybe imposter syndrome, which can be really crippling and actually hinder crucial entrepreneurial actions like taking calculated risks.
So given all that, what are some proactive strategies? How can entrepreneurs really prioritize their own well-being amidst the chaos?
Proactive management is definitely the key. It starts with recognizing those early warning signs of burnout, like persistent fatigue, losing enthusiasm for things you used to enjoy.
You can go where?
Being self-aware, yes. Then, prioritizing self-care is just non-negotiable. Simple things sometimes. Exercise, enough sleep, mindfulness practices, even something like gratitude journaling can make a real difference.
Setting boundaries too, I imagine.
Crucial, setting clear boundaries between work and personal life. Learning effective delegation, you don't have to do everything yourself. That can alleviate a lot of pressure.
And support systems.
Hugely important. Building a strong support network, family, friends, mentors, other entrepreneurs provides vital emotional and practical support. And, critically, not being afraid to seek professional help when needed. That's a sign of strength, not weakness. There are resources out there, like the Disaster Distress Helpline, for immediate support in crisis situations.
Because ultimately the health of the founder directly impacts the health of the business, doesn't it?
Precisely. There's a very clear link between entrepreneurial well-being and business outcomes. Productivity, decision quality, relationships, errors. If the entrepreneur isn't thriving, the venture is likely to suffer. So prioritizing well-being isn't just a personal benefit.
It's strategic.
It's absolutely strategic. It's an investment in the business's most critical asset, the entrepreneur themselves.
Okay, that's a really powerful point. Let's shift our focus now a bit to the external environment. Presidential transitions, for instance, can bring pretty significant changes. How do these typically reshape the business landscape?
Yeah, they almost invariably lead to some reshuffling of the business landscape. You see new policies, naturally, but also shifts in agency leadership and evolving enforcement priorities across various sectors.
Like what?
Well, new administrations often implement temporary freezes on new regulations while they review things. They might also review existing government contracts to make sure things align with their agenda.
And what are some of the key policy areas that tend to see the most change, the ones that have the biggest impact on entrepreneurs?
Several areas usually see movement. Tax policy is a big one. Changes to corporate or individual rates, deductions like the qualified business income, QBI deduction, R&D expensing rules, bonus depreciation,
The SALT cap.
the SALT cap, estate tax, yeah. For instance, looking ahead, the impending expiration of many provisions from the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act could create, well, a huge tax year, as some put it, with lots of planning needed.
Okay, what else?
Labor laws are another frequent area of change. Rules around worker classification employee versus contractor non-compete agreements, National Labor Relations Board rulings, minimum wage, overtime regulations.
We've seen recent examples of that, right?
Absolutely. Like the Department of Labor's recent rule on worker classification or the FTC's proposed ban on non-competes. These things can significantly impact how businesses operate.
What about regulations?
The overall regulatory environment can shift too. You might see deregulation in some areas, but also new regulations in emerging fields like AI or environmental protection, like changes to NEPA. Enforcement priorities for things like the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act can change. Even diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, especially for federal contractors, can see adjustments.
Trade.
Trade policies and tariffs are often in the spotlight. New tariffs imposed, old ones removed, trade agreements renegotiated. This directly impacts businesses involved in import and export.
And just the general economic climate.
Right. Broader economic policies related to inflation, interest rates, fiscal stimulus, they all influence the overall business climate. And just the transition period itself can create uncertainty that affects investment and hiring decisions.
It sounds like a lot of potential uncertainty, maybe even anxiety for small business owners.
It definitely can be. These policy shifts can create real operational and financial challenges. And what makes it particularly difficult during these transitions is what some call compounded uncertainty. Meaning it's not just the potential new policies themselves, it's also the time lag before new agency leaders are in place, before the final details are hammered out, before clear guidance is issued.
So things are unclear for a while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Federal agencies might freeze contracts. It can sometimes take, 18 to 24 months for a new administration's initiatives to fully materialize and be implemented. Plus, you have potential delays in IRS guidance or even the possibility sometimes of retroactive legislation. That adds another layer of complexity.
So given all that, what proactive strategies can small businesses actually use to navigate these policy shifts effectively?
Navigating this really requires a proactive and flexible approach. First and foremost, stay informed.
Yeah.
Try executive orders, new legislation, agency guidance. Use reputable news sources, government websites, industry associations. Knowledge is power here.
Okay. What else?
Scenario planning and financial stress testing become vital. Develop some what-if scenarios for potential policy outcomes. What if tax rates change? What if labor costs go up? What if new tariffs affect my supply chain?
Run the numbers.
Run the numbers, exactly. Then, try to build adaptable compliance structures within your internal systems. Design things for flexibility so you can respond more easily to new regulations.
And internal policies.
Definitely review and update your business plan regularly. And carefully review and update your HR policies, things like worker classification, DEI policies, remote work rules, keep them current.
Professional advice seems key too.
Absolutely essential. Engage with your legal counsel, your tax advisors, maybe HR experts to understand the specific implications for your business. Don't try to navigate complex legal or tax changes alone.
Good advice.
Also, focus on your core competencies and customer relationships. Those are strengths you can control. And finally, consider diversifying your operations. Reduce dependence on single suppliers, single customers, single revenue streams to mitigate risks.
You also mentioned collective action earlier.
Yeah.
How can small businesses leverage that?
Right. While one small business might feel like it doesn't have much influence, collective action through organizations like, say, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce or the NFIB can be very effective.
How so?
They advocate for small business interests at state and federal levels. They lobby on issues like tax provisions or tariff exclusions. Engaging with these groups, lending your voice, can amplify concerns and potentially shape policy outcomes.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What are some of the key organizations that can be particularly helpful during these transition periods? Let's start with the SBA, the Small Business Administration.
Okay, the SBA. They offer core services that are really valuable. Loan programs like the 7A or 504, counseling services, disaster assistance, help with federal contracting.
Their focus can change.
Exactly. It's important to remember the SBA itself is subject to changes in reorganization, focus, even funding levels, depending on the administration. So always verify the current availability and eligibility for their program.
And they have local help, too.
Yes, that's a great point. They have local district offices and resource partners like SCORE mentors, small business development centers, SBDCs, women's business centers, veterans business outreach centers, lots of local support.
Okay. And the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, what's their role?
The Chamber actively advocates on major policy issues impacting businesses, tariffs, tax, regulation. They provide resources like policy updates, webinars, events like Small Business Day, all designed to keep businesses informed and engaged.
What about the National Federation of Independent Business, the NFIB? You mentioned them for advocacy.
Right. The NFIB specifically focuses on advocating for small and independent businesses. They push for things like tax relief, like making the 20% small business deduction permanent reduced regulation, healthcare affordability. They also offer informational resources like legal guides on tricky areas like worker classification or wage and hour laws.
And for HR-specific issues, you mentioned SHRM.
Yes, SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management. They provide excellent guidance on navigating shifts in HR and labor law, things like DEI trends, deregulation impacts, AI in the workplace, immigration changes, return to work policies. They offer toolkits and up-to-date info to help businesses stay compliant.
The key takeaway seems to be that the support landscape is dynamic.
Absolutely. Support from these organizations evolves with administrative changes, so proactive and continuous engagement is really key to leveraging these resources effectively.
Okay, let's shift gears again to a topic that unfortunately seems increasingly relevant: weathering the storm entrepreneurship in times of disaster.
Yeah, this is crucial. Disasters, whether they're natural like hurricanes or wildfires, health-related like pandemics, economic downturns, or even technological failures like cyber attacks, they pose significant threats, especially to small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs.
And the stats are sobering, aren't they? Many don't reopen after a major hit.
Sadly, yes, which is why proactive preparedness is absolutely vital. It's not just about reaction, it's about having a plan before disaster strikes.
Let's talk about business continuity planning, or BCP. What exactly is it, and why is it so critical?
Okay, so a business continuity plan, or BCP, is essentially a documented strategy. It outlines how your business will maintain or quickly restore its critical functions during and after a disruption.
And it's not just about IT.
Right? That's a common misconception. It's absolutely not just about IT. A good BCP supports the whole company: operations, communications, supply chain, personnel, everything.
So what are the key elements that should be in a solid BCP?
Well, first, you need a risk assessment and a business impact analysis, or BIA.
What do those involve?
You identify potential threats, internal and external, and evaluate their potential impact on different parts of your business. Operations, finances, reputation, customers. This helps you prioritize. You define things like your recovery time objectives, RTO, how quickly you need functions back up, and recovery point objectives, RPO, how much data loss is acceptable.
Okay, identify risks, assess impact. Then what?
Then you develop recovery strategies. This includes IT and data backup and recovery secure backups, regular testing, identifying critical systems, but it also includes operational continuity, defining manual workarounds if primary systems fail.
Supply chain, too.
Definitely. Supply chain resilience is huge. Analyzing vulnerabilities, diversifying suppliers, maybe localizing some sourcing, ensuring visibility, also planning for alternate work sites or enabling effective remote work becomes key.
Who manages all this during a crisis?
You need clearly defined roles and responsibilities. Establish a dedicated disaster recovery team with clear roles, authority, and even succession plans if key people are unavailable.
And the plan itself needs attention.
Absolutely. Regular plan testing through drills or simulations, ongoing training for the team, and periodic maintenance and updates are essential. A plan sitting on a shelf is useless.
Where can businesses find help creating these plans?
Good question. Resources like Ready.gov, run by FEMA, offer BCP templates and guidance. The SBA also has resilience guides. The key is that BCP isn't a one-off IT project. It involves human elements, operational processes, external dependencies. It's a core strategic activity involving everyone.
So let's say despite the best planning, a disaster does strike. What kind of support is typically available afterwards?
Knowing where to turn for help is crucial. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, plays a central role in coordinating the federal response, providing resources, grants, and operating disaster recovery centers.
And the SBA.
The SBA is often the primary source of financial aid for businesses post-disaster. They offer business physical disaster loans up to $2 million to repair or replace damaged property not covered by insurance.
Okay.
And economic injury disaster loans, or EIDL. These provide working capital up to $2 million again to help meet obligations like payroll, rent, utilities that the business could have met had the disaster not occurred. The EIDL is not for physical repairs or expansion, though.
How do businesses access these?
Applications are usually online and also available at those disaster recovery centers FEMA sets up. It's worth noting the SBA sometimes increases loan amounts specifically for mitigation measures to prevent future damage.
Are there other federal agencies involved?
Yes, the IRS often provides automatic tax relief, like filing extensions, for taxpayers in federally declared disaster areas. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, has specific programs for agricultural businesses.
What about insurance?
Insurance is absolutely critical. Business interruption insurance and property coverage are your first lines of defense. But you need to review policies before a disaster, understand deductibles, limits, exclusions, especially for risks common in your region, like floods or earthquakes.
Are there pitfalls with insurance?
Sometimes. For example, business interruption claims might be denied if the interruption was due to a utility outage caused by damage elsewhere, rather than direct physical damage to your own property. It gets complex.
And beyond federal aid and insurance?
Definitely investigate state and local government programs, as they often have specific relief funds. And don't overlook philanthropic organizations, foundations, and charities sometimes offer grants or technical assistance.
It sounds like a complicated landscape to navigate after a disaster.
It can be. It's sometimes described as a Byzantine patchwork of aid. And it's crucial to remember that much federal aid comes in the form of loans that need to be repaid.
So you can't rely solely on government help.
Exactly. Small businesses absolutely cannot solely rely on post-disaster aid. Proactive financial resilience, having adequate insurance, and building up emergency funds, that's your primary defense.
Communication is obviously vital during and after a crisis. What are some best practices there?
Effective crisis communication is all about maintaining trust with your stakeholders, employees, customers, suppliers, the community, and ensuring operational continuity. But surprisingly, many SMEs lack formal plans.
So what should they do?
Before a crisis hits, develop a comprehensive plan. Define protocols, communication channels, designate spokespersons, even draft pre-approved message templates for different scenarios, and train employees on their roles in the plan.
And during the crisis?
Communicate early, timely, and transparently. Stick to accurate information. Use multiple channels, your website, social media, email, whatever works for your audience. Keep messaging consistent. And don't forget, internal communication, keeping your employees informed, is paramount. Also, monitor public perception online and respond promptly to concerns or misinformation.
What about after it's over?
Definitely review your plan's effectiveness. What worked, what didn't. Update the plan based on those lessons learned. The U.S. Chamber also offers good guidance on crisis comms.
It sounds like it's really proactive reputation management, not just reactive damage control.
That's exactly it. Planning and training before a crisis are absolutely essential.
Now, it's not always doom and gloom. Sometimes crises can actually spark innovation, right? How can entrepreneurs find opportunity even in adversity?
It's true. Crises can act as powerful catalysts for innovation. They compel businesses to adapt, find new solutions, sometimes pivot entirely.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. Think about how many restaurants quickly shifted to offering pre-cooked meals or expanded delivery services during the pandemic, or companies that strengthened their cybersecurity after experiencing a breach, turning a negative into a long-term positive. Domino's improved online ordering and contactless delivery, leading to significant sales growth. There are stories of local businesses using insurance payouts strategically and communicating effectively to recover quickly. Even historical examples like Dyson, persisting through countless failures before success.
So what are the strategies for capitalizing on these unexpected opportunities?
Key strategies include, first, deeply understanding how customer needs are changing because of the crisis, maybe even asking them directly. Then, leveraging your existing core strengths and assets in new ways. Embracing agility and rapid iteration, testing new ideas quickly. Accelerating digital transformation is often key, and fostering collaboration and partnerships can open new doors.
So it's often about using what you already have, just differently.
Exactly. Successful adaptations often involve identifying those newly emerged needs and creatively applying existing capabilities to meet them. It's usually less risky than trying to start an entirely new venture from scratch. The sweet spot is often at the intersection of a pressing new problem and your existing strengths. Conduct rapid assessments. What's the new problem, and how can our assets help solve it?
That's a great practical approach.
Yeah.
Okay, let's broaden the lens now to proactively seizing opportunities in general, not just in crises. Where do entrepreneurs even begin with identifying what's next?
It really starts with understanding the market landscape. Solid market research, trend analysis, and opportunity assessment are fundamental. Understanding your market informs literally every strategic decision, from targeting customers to differentiating your product.
What does effective market research look like for, say, a smaller business?
It doesn't have to be massively expensive. Start by defining your purpose. What specific question are you trying to answer? Then, study your target market, develop buyer personas. Look closely at your competitors. Choose the right research methods, primary, like surveys or interviews, secondary, like industry reports. Analyze the results for actionable insights, not just interesting data.
And trend analysis, how does that help spot opportunities specifically?
Trend analysis is about looking at shifts in technology, consumer behavior, demographics, regulations to identify emerging patterns and potential openings.
How can small businesses do that practically?
Start small. Maybe validate one key question or hypothesis. Combine quantitative data, market size, competitor web traffic, industry funding trends, hiring patterns with qualitative insights from customer interviews or industry experts. Test your hypotheses with small-scale experiments. Reevaluate frequently, trends change. Use tools like Google Trends, maybe SEMrush Market Explorer, or even just monitor customer reviews, online forums, social media chatter, and keep an eye on regulatory changes. They often create new needs or markets.
So you gather all this info, then how do you actually assess if something is a real opportunity worth pursuing?
That's where opportunity assessment frameworks come in handy. They provide structure for your thinking.
Like SWOT analysis.
Exactly. SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, is a classic. It helps you match your internal capabilities to external possibilities. There's also PESTLE analysis,
Which is?
analyzing the macro environment. Political, economic, sociocultural, technological, legal, and environmental factors that might create opportunities or threats. Think about how political shifts alter regulations or environmental concerns spur demand for green products.
Okay. Any others?
Porter's Five Forces helps analyze industry competition, the threat of new entrants, buyer and supplier power, substitutes, rivalry to gauge market attractiveness. The business model canvas is great for visually mapping out and iterating on your business model. The Lean Startup Framework emphasizes rapid prototyping and customer feedback, and the Product Market Fit Framework helps determine if your offering truly meets market needs and can generate revenue.
That's a lot of frameworks.
It is, but the key isn't just knowing them, it's using them dynamically.
Yeah.
They aren't one-time exercises. You should revisit them, especially your SWOT and business model canvas, regularly, particularly when the market is in flux. Think of them as tools for ongoing strategic dialogue and adaptation. Reevaluate often is the mantra.
Got it. So once you've identified and assessed an opportunity, how do innovation and pivoting fit in?
Well, sometimes the opportunity lies in disruptive innovation, where agile companies challenge established players, often by targeting overlooked customer segments or creating entirely new markets. Think low-end disruption, like CVS Minute Clinics offering basic health services, or new market disruption, like the transistor radio creating a portable music market.
And pivoting, that's about changing direction.
Exactly. Successful pivoting often involves, again, focusing on those evolving customer needs, leveraging your core strengths and assets in a new way, doing thorough due diligence before you leap, and maybe exploring new sales or distribution channels.
Can you share some examples of successful pivots?
Sure, there are famous ones like Apple shifting from computers to consumer electronics like the iPod and iPhone, Netflix moving from DVDs by mail to streaming, and now original content, Starbucks refocusing on the core coffee experience after overexpanding, Slack commercializing an internal communication tool, Even Nokia has transformed multiple times over its long history.
So pivots can be really significant.
They can be, or they can be smaller adjustments. Think of Airbnb adding online experiences during the pandemic, or maybe a local bookstore adding a cafe to adapt to changing retail habits. The key, often, is that successful pivots are frequently adjacent innovations, meaning they leverage existing assets, knowledge, or customer relationships. They're usually less risky than a complete reinvention where you start from absolute scratch. It comes back to assessing how your current capabilities can be repurposed to meet new or evolving needs.
And that makes sense building what you have. Now, what are some of the key strategic tools entrepreneurs need in their toolkit for growth, especially when pursuing these opportunities?
Okay, the essentials include, first, a solid business plan. It's your roadmap, articulating your mission, offerings, strategies, financials, competitive landscape. Even if it evolves, you need that starting point.
And funding, of course.
Funding is often crucial. There are many options, each with pros and cons. Bootstrapping, using your own funds, gives you control but limits capital. Venture capital offers significant cash and expertise but means giving up equity and control. Angel investors are similar but often earlier stage.
What else?
Crowdfunding, either rewards-based for products or equity-based, can provide capital and validation. Grants are great because they're non-dilutive, but they're competitive and have constraints. SBA loans offer government backing and often favorable terms, but the application process can be lengthy. Then there's traditional debt financing, asset-based lending, trade credit. Lots of options.
How do you choose, especially in uncertain times?
That's a key consideration. In dynamic or uncertain environments, maintaining strategic flexibility and control is really important. So you might prioritize funding sources that allow for more adaptability, like bootstrapping, grants, or maybe product crowdfunding over those with more rigid expectations, like potentially some VC deals. The optimal choice really depends on market stability and how much adaptive capacity you need.
Beyond planning and funding.
Networking is huge. Building relationships provides support, mentorship, potential opportunities, and invaluable knowledge sharing. It requires proactive engagement, offering value, not just asking for things. And branding and storytelling are critical.
Why storytelling?
Building a strong brand identity helps you connect with your target audience. And telling your story, your founder journey, your why, builds ethos, helps with PR, resonates with investors, connects with customers, and differentiates you. It builds authenticity.
And marketing, especially for startups.
Marketing in a changing landscape often requires creative, low-cost strategies. Content marketing, social media engagement, SEO, referral programs, maybe trying for a viral video, participating in online groups, guerrilla marketing tactics, trade shows, aligning with a social cause, email marketing. Lots of ways to get the word out without a huge budget.
Okay, looking ahead now. How can entrepreneurs really bake resilience and adaptability into the very DNA of their business? Make it future-proof?
Well, future-proofing isn't really about achieving some static, invulnerable state. It's more about building the ongoing capacity to adapt and evolve.
How do you do that?
It fundamentally requires an organizational culture that truly embraces change, actively learns from setbacks, and consistently fosters innovation. It means prioritizing strategic resilience, rethinking leadership approaches, planning processes, operational flexibility, maybe taking a strengths-based approach, focusing on what the organization does well and leveraging that.
What's the role of leadership in that?
Leadership is pivotal. Leaders need to champion adaptability. That means fostering open communication, creating psychological safety so people feel comfortable experimenting and even failing sometimes, and empowering employees to take calculated risks and contribute ideas. Leaders also need to remain composed during turbulence and encourage challenging the status quo.
And empowering employees.
Absolutely critical. Engage them, invest in their skill development, genuinely encourage their ideas and feedback. They're often closest to the customers and the operational realities.
So it's really about creating a learning organization.
Exactly. That's the core of it. Building that ongoing capacity to adapt, learn, rethink, and evolve.
And continuous learning and strategic foresight seem essential parts of that ongoing capacity.
They absolutely are. Staying ahead requires a constant commitment to learning about your market, your customers, new technologies, emerging trends. And strategic foresight is about looking ahead.
How do you practice strategic foresight?
It involves regularly scanning the horizon for those trends, potential disruptions, new technologies, societal shifts. Methodologies like scenario planning, thinking through different possible futures, and that trend analysis we discussed earlier are key tools.
Sounds analytical.
It is, but effective foresight also blends that analytical rigor with creative thinking. It's about envisioning possibilities that might go beyond the current data, thinking about black swan events, disruptive innovations that seem impossible today, using techniques like blue sky thinking to generate truly novel ideas.
So analysis and creativity.
You need both. Analytical skills to understand the present and extrapolate trends, and creative thinking to imagine different futures and navigate truly disruptive change. Cultivating both is crucial.
Okay, so pulling this all together for entrepreneurs listening, what are the key actionable takeaways they should focus on? How can they use this in crafting their own narrative, their own strategy?
I think the main message is about proactivity and agency. Don't just let change happen to you.
Be proactive.
Be proactive. Second, showcase resilience. If you're telling your story, share compelling examples of overcoming adversity. Focus on the how, the strategies, the mindsets, the decisions that got you through.
Make it practical.
Yes, provide practical frameworks and tools, like the idea of a BCP using SWOT or PESTLE, scenario planning, but explain them in an accessible way, maybe with step-by-step approaches.
Allied help.
Definitely highlight the available support systems and resources, the SBA and its partners, FEMA, the Chamber, NFIB, but also emphasize, as we discussed, that these resources are dynamic and you need to stay engaged.
Maintain perspective.
Balance realism with optimism. Acknowledge the very real challenges, but always showcase how they can be navigated and how adversity itself can breed opportunity. Encourage a sense of hope and possibility.
And maybe community.
Encourage a community of learning and support, perhaps even through platforms like this. Integrate expert insights, like the ones we've drawn on, to lend credibility. And always focus on actionable advice with clear takeaways listeners can apply.
This has been a really fantastic, comprehensive deep dive. So much practical insight there.
Indeed. The core themes, adaptability, resilience, opportunity recognition, they aren't just abstract business concepts. They are practical skills, strategies, mindsets that can be actively cultivated and implemented.
So maybe the final thought for everyone listening is this. How will you proactively integrate these principles, adaptability and resilience, into the very core of your venture? Not just to weather the storms, but to actually capitalize on this ever-shifting landscape of innovation.
A great question to ponder.
Thank you for joining the Innovation Perspective. We dive into business innovation, exploring visionary entrepreneurs and groundbreaking strategies to help you understand the evolving business world. Perfect for founders and the curious alike. Thank you for listening, and please like, follow, and subscribe.